mighty dwarf kingdoms, long thought diminished, are resurgent under their high king.
Hello and welcome to another Total War Warhammer guide. Today we are looking at the Rune Smith and the Master Engineer. I do love the model for the Master Engineer. I think he looks fantastic. He's got all his contraptions on his back and all sorts of good stuff. So we're going to talk about how the different attributes between the two characters, their special abilities, and then we're going to sort of talk about how we'd use them in battle. So they are very different. So first off, we're going to look at the Rune Smith. Now, Dwarfs don't use magic, they don't trust it. So all the other, or most of the other armies use magic of some description, but Dwarfs have runes. That's their sort of version of magic. But for this, in essence, you can just call it their version of magic, really. So they even call it rune magic, runic magic, which is brilliant. So this is the Rune Smith. He is your wizard. Let's call him a wizard. The unit can bind the winds of magic into powerful runes. So it's magic in another name. He is still armoured, which is nice because most wizards aren't armoured at all, so he can take a bit of punishment. 2,600 hit points, which is pretty good. Massive amount of armour. The dwarves are very heavily armoured. 120 armour. Leadership of 70. Obviously, dwarf leadership is really good. Very slow speed. All dwarfs are slow. Melee attack of 40. Defense of 32. Weapon strength of 320, which is decent. 90 of that is armour piercing. That's pretty okay for a fighty, for a sort of character, especially because he casts spells, runes, and a charge bonus that's dismal. So he has missile resistance of 15%, like all infantry characters. He has magic resistance of 25% because he's a dwarf. He has that leadership bonus because he's a leader, so that's always helpful. He can hide in a forest, always nice. So let's talk on to his abilities. So the first thing he's got is an augment called Forge Fire. It's a constant ability and it's around himself and it affects allies in range, but it is a very, very short range. Probably one of the shortest in the game. 10 meters, it's nothing. But it gives them 4% armor piercing damage. Now, that's a nice little buff, but it's not good enough to dictate how I'd use him in battle. So the first rune we're going to look at is the Rune of Negation. It's a ward save, and it instantly affects targets in an area for 10 seconds. So you target yourself and it affects allies within 50 meters. And it gives you a massive plus 44% damage resistance, which is fantastic. That is a great little spell to use when the two armies clash. But you have to be, remember, close to battle because you can only cast it on yourself and it's the units around you. Next up, we've got the Rune of Oath and Steel. It's an augment, it's an instant, so that's nice, no cast time. 13 seconds on yourself and allies within 30 meters plus 15 armor. Lovely jubbly. It's good. Dwarfs already have really good armor, so it's not as useful as it might be in other armies, but you know, take it. Next up, if we've got his only direct damage spell, which is a Rune of Rack and Ruin. It lasts for 10 seconds and you can target an enemy within 75 meters, and it basically is really good for disrupting battle lines and going against like large infantry blocks. Those that advanced army that's coming towards you, use this on them, and it's very decent. My personal preference, because the dwarf are a very fighty. Actually, we'll talk about that afterwards, how I'd use them in battle. Let's move on to the Master Engineer. So the Master Engineer is an unusual character in that he's a ranged character. Most of them are much more fighty or spelly. That's spelly's a word, isn't it? So this unit improves all nearby friendly missile units. Now this is amazing, especially if you run what's called a dwarf gun line, where you've got all your big units of missile infantry and then your artillery. Absolutely fantastic. He's also armoured himself and he does armour piercing damage. He's got the same amount of hit points, 2,661. His armour is amazing, 120. Leadership is great. Speed is slow as fuck because he's got little legs. Melee attack and defense is pretty average. Weapon strength is 240, but it does do armor piercing. Most of that is armor piercing, 220. Rubbish charge bonus, 45 ammunition, which is fantastic. 135 range, which is okay. His missile damage, however, is massive, 334. 180 of that is armor piercing. And it takes 7.2 seconds to reload, which is pretty slow, so you're not going to get off the most volleys in the world you know, unless you're skirting the enemy, staying out of combat. So, missile resistance 15%, magic resistance 25%. He's a dwarf. He's got that leadership bonus. He can hide in the forest. But here's one of his interesting abilities. It's extra powder. It's a constant, so it happens all the time, and it's around himself, and it affects allies in range, and only allies that can shoot. Anyone within 30 meters that can shoot, they get plus 6% explosion damage, which is fantastic, especially for artillery and stuff like that. Just really good. So this character is designed to sort of stay back with the missile troops. Now, so this is the Ballistics Calibration, and this is the biggest reason why you're going to bring this guy into battle, is that it lasts for 31 seconds, so it's a long time buff, and it's you can recast that every 45, so absolutely fantastic. It casts around yourself and affects allies within 30 meters, and it gives it minus 16% reload time and plus 20% accuracy. This is huge for missile infantry, and artillery is the big one, because obviously that reload time is so slow. That's a really nice boost. So let's go join my little ginger Mohican buddy, Iron Ungrim, because I had to take him into the battle, and we're just going to sort of have a walk and talk about how you'd use them. So if we're thinking about the Rune Smith as basically a mage that can fight a bit, so he's more utility than, say, a fire wizard or something like that. My two favourite runes that he has are damage resistance and armour. So kind of damage resistance, really. And these is what I'm going to save my power for, is to cast these on myself and the units around me. So I'm going to have him literally in the middle of my front line, but maybe just behind. I don't want him committed to the fight too much. He's fighty and he's survivable, but you want to be very, very sort of careful with him, not getting overcommit him, really. Let's see if we can. What's the range on that? It's only 75 meters. Okay, so let's get them forward. Yeah, so that's how basically I'd use this guy. The Master Engineer, however, is going to be on your back lines. He's going to help out your missile infantry. He's going to be very looking after your artillery. The good thing is, if you get flanked by a unit of Goblin Wolf Riders, which might generally take down, you know, your stone thrower or whatever, your cannons or flame cannons, this guy can actually bodyguard those units as well. So let's see him do some damage eventually against obviously he's the slowest shooting guy in the world. So what are we going to use? Are we going to use this? We'll let him charge us because it doesn't really matter. So it's very short range, our spell, but it should do some damage. There we go. Here it's like a sort of damage over time, moves with the unit. Let's sort Ungrim to get him. As you can see, we are not doing much damage with the Master Engineer. Like I said, he's got a shot, but it's a single shot. It's not going to do much damage. It's very armor piercing, so it might be good versus like trolls or big units like that. As we said, they can all get stuck in and fighting. I'm going to use my Rune Smith as my just behind that front line, boosting my units' armor and resistances, and then I'm going to be using my engineer. I totally forgot what it's called then, brain fart. My Master Engineer as my bodyguard to my missile infantry and my artillery, whilst boosting them at the same time. And I'm going to be taking pot shots against heavily armoured troops, elite troops, Reichsguard Knight and stuff. There's no point with him shooting against, you know, lightly armoured stuff or spearmen or anything like that, because you're just going to pick off one at a time pretty slowly. So as you can see, Ungrim's taking a bit of damage. We might have to boost him there. So there's my mini guide for the Rune Smith and the Master Engineer. Hope you enjoyed it. They play very different. I like gun lines generally in my army, so I like the Master Engineer. I do enjoy him very much. I think he's really, really useful, especially if you use a lot of artillery. That buff is amazing. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you want to see more, click on my channel, and I've done tons of guides for units. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it, and I will see you bright and early in the next video. Thank you very much. Bye bye.